Welcome, Wargamers, to the dark underlayers of the Mortal Realms, because today we are talking about the iconic Skaven. Quite possibly the most iconic property, at least within the fantasy-verse, I would say, that GW has, adored by many, beloved by all. They are front and center in this new edition, being included in the core starter set, the Skaven Tide box, and then all the subsequent smaller boxes that come out afterwards. And with the release of their battletome, it is our first glimpses into the 4th edition of Age of Sigmar, what that means for armies and stuff going forward, for storytelling opportunities, but also for a renewed vision on the Skaven within the Age of Sigmar universe. So what I'd like to do in this series is reintroduce ourselves to the Skaven. Who are they? What do they want? Where do they fit into the greater chaos kind of faction now that everything was shaken up with the Skaven Doom? We're going to explore all of this and the unit lore this week on 2+ Tough, because a lot of big changes have happened. Now, one thing I'd like to add right up top, if you're interested in this video, this faction, this game, please consider using any of the affiliate links in my description down below. Using those links saves you money, and every single time you do at no cost, it goes directly to supporting me, my wife, our cats, the whole channel. And also, I wanted to throw a shout out there that I have 2+ Tough dice now available through Baron of Dice, which is an awesome business. They're so fun to work with. So if you want to support the channel and also another small business in our community, head over to Baron of Dice in the link in my link tree down below and get yourself a set. They roll 6s 1/6 of the time, every time. Secondly, as this new edition is unraveling before us and now data is coming in, if you want to learn more about Age of Sigmar, the gameplay side of things, head on over to Goonhammer. They have fantastic content for both talking about the game conceptually, painting models, build guides, that kind of stuff. If you want to know about it, it's on Goonhammer. And their boy Campbell has actually started doing YouTube videos for Goonhammer, so also go check out their YouTube channel. Okay, so for those of you who are new to the Age of Sigmar setting, or maybe even just the faction, the Skaven are a race of rat men that seek to wreck the realms until they are desolate husks that only these rats can play in. They are nearly innumerable, they breed like crazy, they can dig up from underground, and more. They really are a scourge of the realms, and it's all in service to their personal deity, the Great Horned Rat. But until now, in terms of the grand narrative of things we've been following, the previous major story arcs of Age of Sigmar, they've been relatively tame. I'm going to put that word in bold, relatively tame. They have forts, warlords, armies. They work in service of one another and hire and are hired by other chaos forces. But I think we can all agree, right, that detonating a chunk of a continent and parking your corner of unreality up to that hole is maybe a step beyond. So it is worth starting our exploration of the Skaven, and I want to do this from the top down. And so in today's video, we're going to introduce the Great Horned Rat, because this battletome has done more to flesh out the Great Horned Rat as a character than any battletome before. I just think it does a better job. There is this wonderful little sidebar, like a missive that was scribbled by some human, and it's essentially like two scholars trying to discern the deity of the Skaven god from their little chittering and what they understand of the Skaven tongue. What is their internal mythos that brought them from the old world, the setting previous to Age of Sigmar. And in that narrative, from what they gather, the Great Horned Rat gathered up Skaven blight into its bosom and then essentially launched into nothingness along with the world that was. Along the way, to survive, the Great Horned Rat devoured its own children for sustenance, like rats do, and the Skaven that we see today are descendants of the survivors that the Great Horned Rat had shepherded into the mortal realms. Now, it's important to put a huge asterisk there that that's not a fact. That's what these scholars are piecing together through two Skavens' dialogue, which honestly, when it comes to forces that are alien to us, I think is the most fascinating way to do storytelling. Don't take it at face value, but just tell me what they think is going on. I guess technically this is what they think the Skaven think, but you know what I mean. It's so much more fun than just third-person fact-splaining everything. But there's a lot more going on than just being, a race from the old world that was brought forward. Because more than just how the Skaven got here, this battletome, in no uncertain terms, I'm going to make that very clear, in no uncertain terms, solidifies the Great Horned Rat as a Chaos God. The events of the Skaven Doom have launched him in power and superiority up to the tier the 4 are now 5. And if you think to yourself, that's a bunch of garbage, remember, all the Chaos Gods still fawn over an 8-pointed Chaos Star. It's a whole thing. The numbers don't matter. He's up there. I'm not a mathematician. And it's not just like oh yeah, he's cool. They actually invested a lot of information into making him feel like he belongs amongst the other Chaos Gods in the Pantheon. And here's what I mean by that. In this book, the Great Horned Rat has a mortal emotion that he feeds on. That emotion is desperation. And I'll be honest, I did not see that coming. And for folks who are new to Age of Sigmar and GW stuff, whatever, the short version is that the Chaos Gods in this fiction feed on emotions that you and I feel. When we feel things, it's kind of projected into another dimension, what you and I would call the realm of chaos. When one emotion becomes dominant, it can kind of take a crude form and intelligence, what we would call demons. And so that's how we have Khorne, the god of bloodshed and murder and rage, all those emotions pulled together and made Khorne. Nurgle is decay and entropy and despair. And this book posits that the Great Horned Rat is a chaos god of desperation. I'm going to read to you an insert that I think does a phenomenal job. If you are the writer at GW who did this, chef's kiss to you. And I quote, "The Horned Rat draws strength from the present who devours their family rather than starve. The preacher made a lord through prophesying an oncoming disaster. The child who topples their siblings' work out of a need for attention. He is what mortals become in their most despicable moments, self-serving vermin. It is hardly a surprise, then, that he is so bound to the fortunes of his Skaven brood who revel in such deviousness. The black hunger suffered by all Skaven is an echo of the Horned Rat's own need to consume. Combined with the Ratmen's explosive fecundity, the environment in their warren cities is therefore one of constant scarcity. Skaven must claw for scraps of prestige, tearing down all others. Only the most powerful have enough meager security to potentially reflect on their society's sickness. But so too have they been twisted by it, their master forever whispering both glory and threats in their mind. I adore this so much that I can't stand it. It's a nice fresh take, it fits into the context of everything, how chaos and demons work and all of that. It's the personification of you at your worst, most selfish moment, but on the scale of billions of individuals. He wanted to be one of the 4 for a long time, the Great Horned Rat that is, but Skaven souls, as it's illustrated in this book, shine very dimly in the realm of chaos. So he kind of lacked the chaos juice to kind of excel himself or thrust himself into that pantheon of the 4. Well, when the Skaven Doom went off, that huge explosion across Akshi, his moment to ascend didn't come from the blowing up of a mountain, although that was rad and super important. It came because that boom made a whole continent of people, the whole realm of Akshi, become their most desperate, selfish selves in one loud crescendo. All over the realms, Skaven poured out of their cities to attack. In every corner of the realms, Ratmen were everywhere, digging up from underneath the city, flooding the walls from outside. And all over, there was therefore a desperate defense. There was prophets instilling fear into the masses and so on. As far as a chaos god really, hitting their own note to grow in power, this was really good. And one of the things that's cool, right, as people were debating whether or not the Great Horned Rat is now one of the 4 Chaos Gods, the 5 now, the book actually then takes a moment to say that not only is this happening in the mortal realms, but that the ascendancy of the Great Horned Rat is happening in the realm of chaos as well. The realm of chaos as we know it is, again, this kind of like emotional plane. It's kind of outside of what we would know as physics and stuff like that. But it's dominated by 4 vast kingdoms, right? The kingdoms of the original 4 pantheon of chaos gods. And what's happened since the Skaven Doom is that a black corruption began to kind of permeate all corners of them. All the edges of their realms started to have this kind of like corruption and infection. This was the Great Horned Rat securing for himself his own kingdom in the realm of chaos. It doesn't exist in its own, unified sense like the others, but it exists in the shadows of all others, but collectively takes up 1/5 of the space. And this happened for a few reasons, because the other 4, Khorne, Nurgle, Tzeentch, and Slaanesh, still see this as a continuation of their great game. And so rather than like unifying the 4 against the Great Horned Rat, all of them want to use him for their own purposes. So for example, Khorne's like, I could squish these little rat men anytime I want to, but what if I teamed up with them to punch Tzeentch as hard as I could, and we'll knock him down a peg, and once that's done, I'll take care of the rat men. Like, all of them have that same idea, and the Great Horned Rat, as this manipulator of their desperate need to act as a supreme force to another, lets him have a lot of opportunities. My point in saying all of this is, like, not only does the book clearly assert that the 4 are now 5, and that the Great Horned Rat is a true chaos god tier character, but they went through and made it interesting. Like, I found this book interesting to learn about the Great Horned Rat, and I counter that to saying I don't find Gorka Morka nearly as interesting to learn about in the Ironjaw stuff. It's always a very vague thing. The Bad Moon is more fun to learn about in the Gitz book than Gorka Morka as a god is in most of the Destruction tomes. This paints the Skaven deity as an interesting and active character that has refreshed its kind of, stage within the realms. And it's an interesting and compelling story. Now, one of the other things I wanted to touch on as we're talking about the Great Horned Rat and how they manifest in the realms and stuff like that, it's important to note that he also has probably the most stable gateway between realms amongst the 5 chaos gods. And this is something that always made the Skaven interesting on a micro level, but it just got way bigger. And I'm going to explain this for folks who are new to the game. The Skaven have the ability to essentially kind of create wormholes through reality. We call them gnaw holes. It's just like mining a tunnel, but it can connect vast distances without necessarily going from point A to point B. If you're a 40K fan, think of the webway, but imagine it being very rickety. It's imprecise. There's actually a great deal of stories about how the Skaven accidentally tunnel into the wrong places and it just goes haywire. One time they tunneled into the bottom of a lake in Shyish and they drained the entire lake, which revealed an Ideneth enclave at one point. It's really funny. But they've always had this unique thing as being able to, like rats, dig and burrow into places that everyone thought were well defended and totally safe. And that's balanced by its imperfection and how dangerous it is and so on. But with the Skaven Doom, part of the realm of chaos has found a real tangible foothold in the mortal realms. An entire section of Blight City, this vast underwarren empire of the Skaven, that normally existed as a pocket in the realm of chaos, has now splintered into the real world. The Great Horned Rat's domain was pulled into reality by this explosion. Now, what's interesting is, the other chaos gods can say, go corrupt realm gates. That's been a thing since AOS launched. The whole series began with a realm gate in Akshi that was converted by the forces of Khorne with blood magic to be a gateway straight to hell of Khorne's realm. Super metal, I love it. And it is at least the goal of 3 of those chaos gods to completely envelop the realm, to bring all of Akshi into the realm of Khorne, for example. Or to his kingdom, rather. But that's inherently different than what the Great Horned Rat did, which was he created his own door. And it's a far more stable and permanent solution to a realm gate, because in those same stories where Khorne corrupts a realm gate, they're also brought down. You can destroy it. This is 4th edition. Realm gates, I'm sure they have a health stat somewhere. But corrupting things that already exists to ripping your own major segments of the realm away. Yes, he detonated realm gates to do so, but there were other places they did their own rituals. Like, it wasn't all using everybody else's stuff. They did a whole bunch of magic and destruction to get that spell to go off. So what I'm saying is, because of that, the forces of the Skaven through the Great Horned Rat have such a more stable way to get their forces from point A to point B, from Realm of Chaos to the Mortal Realms, than a lot of what the other forces have. And that's cool. Now we're going to go into more about the Skaven, how they organize themselves and stuff like that in future videos. But I feel like the Skaven are now very much more in line with other Chaos books in that you understand the deity at the top, and that really does help you articulate the motivations and the mindset of the faction below them. Seeing the Skaven as the embodiment of desperation, and all of them at that intensity level and self-centeredness is just perfect, and I could not think of a better way to explain it. Now, how they, as a society function is a totally another deal, and there's great reasons why the Skaven manifest their reverence for the Great Horned Rat differently, but the core emotion is so understandable. And as we kind of transition, normally I end my videos with this segment of like, why is this cool? Just kind of taking a step back. For us as players, okay, if you play a Horde army especially, understanding the mind at the top makes the dudes at the bottom more fun, right? Clan Rat 5 million just kind of blends in with the rest. So it's easy to mistake them as faceless and lacking in character, but to have a real draw of raw emotions attached to them, it goes a long way. And so seeing like, what does the Great Horned Rat want? It's a reflection of all the people below him trying to appease him, copycat him, get his attention. And so that's where you can start to build the interest that comes from your particular army. Now, seeing him ascend to another level, I would absolutely adore it if one day we got a whole slate of Great Horned Rat demons. We do have some. The Vermin Lords that we're going to talk about. There's also the new named character, Vizek Scour. I'm going to do a dedicated video on the demons of the Great Horned Rat, because there's not that many of them. There's not really a ton of lore behind them. I was more meaning like a whole range of them, kind of like how the Chaos Gods have their own demon archetype arm. Because if there's one thing the Skaven need, it's more units. I've always said that. Anyway, friends, I found this to be a really cool depiction. It's interesting when, there was some discussion in a Warhammer community post about the Great Horned Rat ascending to deityship, and I kind of, lurk in a lot of online Age of Sigmar lore forums and that kind of stuff, and there was just a lot of discussion about people really, no, they would never change the 4. It's like, I mean, everything's on the table, and they did it in such I feel like a cohesive way with the rest of the Age of Sigmar lore. It made sense, it was impactful, and it made the Great Horned Rat interesting. And that's all I want. Just make him interesting. For such a cool army, for such an iconic faction and style of artwork and all this stuff that the Skaven has always had going for it, for Games Workshop, I just felt like in the Age of Sigmar era especially, they weren't given that polish to make them truly fascinating. And I feel like this battletome did deliver on that, not only because of the things we mentioned here, clearly defining the Great Horned Rat's role within the army, or within the overall setting, is one thing that's really great. But putting, his personal plans, machinations, and stuff like that on the table just made it a really fun read. Most of these battletomes, I feel like I'm rereading a lot of the same stuff, particularly when it comes to, frankly, the Daughters of Cain books. There's so many of them, and a lot of the lore specifically feels just kind of copy-pasty. This is one that from the get-go, learning about the Great Horned Rat's personal change, and then how that's going to disseminate down through the army about their own sense of superiority and arrogance, and now that they're the big guys on the global stage, it was just, I couldn't put it down. I loved it. So anyway, friends, thank you so much for hanging out and listening. As I yammer on about the Great Horned Rat, I am happy to be back after a little bit of a hiatus. Had a great summer, and now that battletomes are coming, I'm so stoked to jump into more Age of Sigmar lore. Subscribe if you don't want to miss any more Skaven or AOS content, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Thank you so much, and happy wargaming.